Hi, my name is Becky Robinson. I'm the founder and CEO of Weaving Influence, and I am so thrilled to welcome you to today's Motivation Summit with Susan Fowler. We're going to get started right away because we have an incredible amount of content today from amazing experts who are generously sharing their thought leadership and research with us. And as we start today, we would like to do a poll to really get a pulse of where you're coming from. But before we do that, I want to invite you to try out our question panel. We will be using it throughout the broadcast. And I specifically want to know, are you with your organization in a group today? And if so, what organization are you calling in from? And then also, if you're calling in from somewhere unique, and wherever you live, it must be unique, use that question panel to tell us where you are. I know Susan is calling in from the Ken Blanchard Corporation headquarters in, is that San Diego?
Yes.
Beautiful San Diego, California, which is pretty tremendous and amazing. And it looks like we have a few people who are trying out the question panel in places like Alabama and Canada and Florida and Kalamazoo and Phoenix. And we have a group from the Crosstown Civic Credit Union in Canada. So welcome to all of you. And as we get started today, as I said, we want to start with an interactive poll. And I'm so excited to share that with you. And it is such a Susan poll, and I am so thrilled to launch that for you.
So let me explain it. What we're going to see on the screen when the poll comes up is some choices. And we want you to think about why you're here today. And it might be that you are like part of that group and your body is there, but you're not really here. It's like you're going through the motions and you're going to pretend like you're involved, but you're really just kind of hanging out. Or maybe you have the second alternative, and that is you're hoping you're going to learn something today that's going to help you to make more money, or maybe that you'll learn something that will give you a sense of power or status. You know, maybe you're trying to impress your friends by saying that you went to a summit on motivation that had all of these top researchers featured. Maybe you're registered, and so you felt like you had to be here, that you were feeling like, oh, gee, I signed up for this thing and I forgot about it, but I'm here. And you're kind of feeling imposed, like, okay, I'll do it because I said I was going to do it. Maybe you're here because you have values that this particular summit appealed to. Maybe you have a value around learning. Maybe you have a value around being a part of a group of people that really care strongly about certain types of ideas, especially motivation. So maybe it's regarding your values. Or maybe it's just to have fun. Maybe you think that these kinds of events are just a kick for you. So what are the reasons that you are here today? Be honest. We won't be able to see who you are as you're answering the poll, so it's confidential. So just answer the poll, and let's just see the kinds of energy or the types of motivation that people have on this webinar today.
So we actually, Susan, already have about 79% of people who have voted. So I'm going to leave this open for just a couple more seconds. But I think, Susan, that you might be surprised at the results of this poll. It's pretty encouraging.
Okay.
All right, so we have about 84% who have voted. I'm going to close this poll so that we can all see the results.
Okay.
And let's take a look at those together.
I love the honesty of the I'm not really here.
But it seems like most people are here who are optimally motivated, and I know that you're going to tell us about that in just a moment. So I am going to pass the presenter back to our lovely team member who has the slides, and then while I do that, I would love to introduce you, Susan. So Susan implores leaders to stop trying to motivate people. In her latest best-selling book, she explains why motivating people doesn't work and what does. She's the author also of 6 books, including the best-selling Self-Leadership and the 1-Minute Manager with Ken Blanchard. Tens of thousands of people worldwide have learned from her ideas through training programs such as the Situational Self-Leadership and Optimal Motivation product lines. And we are so thrilled to have you, Susan. And Before we jump in to that content with you, Susan, I want to give everyone an overview that we have several different segments throughout today's broadcast. We're going to have several breaks for Q&A with our panel of experts. And I want to let you know in advance that we will share the slides after this event. We will also have recordings of each segment. And we want to invite you to put your questions in the panel, the question panel throughout the broadcast. And we also want to invite you to participate with us live on Twitter today with the hashtag Motivation Summit. And so I want to invite our slides back on the screen from our helper behind the scenes, Kayla. And Susan, you can explain a bit more about what we learned from that poll.
Thank you, Becky. And for those of you that are familiar with some of my work around motivation, I want you to understand that there's other resources which we'll be sharing with you in a little bit, but I'm going to just touch on some of the work that I've been doing because I'm so eager to get into the work that our esteemed researchers and our guests have been doing. So you might have guessed that each of those poll responses is actually representing a particular type of motivation. And one of the great breakthroughs in motivation science is that, first of all, people want to thrive. People want to flourish. And yet what happens is because of the reasons that we're motivated, some of our reasons for being motivated actually have us be more suboptimally motivated and others have us more optimally motivated. So our desire to thrive is strong, but the distractions that we have in terms of the types of motivation that we have in the workplace oftentimes create an issue for us. And so what we're going to be talking about in this first segment is what do we mean by motivation and what's the difference between motivation and the whole concept of engagement. And Becky, are the slides coming up?
You know, we're having a slight technical issue, Susan, and I am going to bring them up as soon as I can.
Okay, so let me just go ahead because I don't have to have the slides. But one of the things that we know is that motivation is the day-to-day skill and it's the day-to-day process that enables you to shift from suboptimal to optimal. And when you do that, over time, you can become engaged in the workplace. You can become or have what we call employee work passion. And that's actually going to be our first segment with Dr. Drea Zigarmi. And so while we're waiting for the slides, Becky, if you go ahead and just introduce Drea, and then we'll get him on camera as soon as we can. But let's go ahead because I think people need to hear from Drea. And if you would introduce him, that would be great.
Thanks so much. So Drea, we are so happy to welcome you today. Drea is the author of 5 books, including Leadership in the 1 Minute Manager with Ken Blanchard and The Leader Within. He's also the award-winning head of research for the Ken Blanchard Companies, and he's an adjunct professor at USD in San Diego. Welcome, Drea.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Hi, Drea. Hey, one of the things that we know, oh, there he is. There's Drea. Hello. Drea, one of the things that we know is that you started doing research about 8 years ago on organizational vitality. And what you found was that employee work passion was one of the cornerstones of organizational vitality. And you also discovered that a lot of people didn't understand where employee work passion, or what a lot of people call employee engagement, where it came from. And so what's really ironic, and I'm just going to set this up and then I want you to explain, what's really ironic is that $350 billion a year is said to be lost in terms of opportunity losses in the workplace because of disengaged employees. Everybody's heard those statistics, I think. And we've also heard that organizations are spending $750 million a year to try to fix it. And so that is a lot of money. But what you discovered was that all this money was being lost from disengaged employees. All this money was being spent to try to fix disengagement. But people had not been asking the question, how do people become engaged or disengaged in the first place? And so if you could enlighten us, and Kayla, if you could show Drea's first slide, that would be fantastic. And Drea, you want to just talk a little bit about what you discovered in terms of how do people become engaged?
Sure. People go through an appraisal process of their work experience on a regular basis. When I say regular, it could be as regular as every minute or on a regular basis, day to day. looking at what they're experiencing and asking or answering a certain set of questions. Do I feel good about what I'm doing or do I not? And if I don't or I do, what does that imply for my behavior in the future?
Okay, hold
And
on one
so,
second. I just go 2 more slides, Kayla, and then because Drea is going to explain. Yeah, one more slide. There you go. And then it's a build. So Drea, you could just direct the slide from here.
sure. If they would just give it one more click.
Okay, one more click. There you go.
So what happens is there's both a logical decision-making process going on and an emotional or affective decision-making going on. And these are bidimensional. One feeds into the other, and they occur simultaneously, but often with different implications. Think of cognition as logical reasons for why what I'm doing is feeling good or not feeling good, and the affect is the decision. I don't feel good. I'm angry, or I'm satisfied, or I'm anxious, or I'm happy about what I'm doing. And so this cognition affect.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I just wanted to make clear. So what happens is, like you say, minute by minute, or at least, major times during the day, people are going through this evaluation process, and it's either subconscious or sometimes it's conscious, but they're evaluating what's happening around them.
That's right. And the conclusion comes, do I feel, and if you'll click it again, you'll see a sense of well-being is the result of these cognitive and affective decisions. And that sense of job well-being or over general well-being then leads to the next implication, which is I intend to do something about it. And so what we're really looking at is a tri-dimensional aspect of decision-making through affect and emotion, then a sense of well-being. Do I like this or do not? Do I have a sense of well-being or do I have a lack of well-being? And then what am I going to do about it? Those intentions. And those intentions are fundamental to understanding the state or doing something about the state, because essentially passion is a state of being. It's a state of existing.
So what we found is happening in a lot of organizations, Drea, is that or obviously individuals are going through this appraisal process on a regular basis, and then they come to this conclusion, like you say, and they're in a state, and then organizations are measuring employee engagement, but they're measuring it at the end of that appraisal process. And what has your research shown about, can you actually affect this appraisal process?
Well, 2 things. A traditional usual measure of engagement is how satisfied are you with your work experience? And they use the word satisfaction as a concept. One of the things that we know is that satisfaction is a very, very secondary predictor of behavior. One of the most important predictors of behavior is the intentions people have to act in a certain way as a result of this sense of well-being or not. So if you click the slide one more time, you will see that these antecedents, or the things that people are looking at, because people look habitually at various organizational characteristics and job characteristics that then lead to this process of appraisal. And then on the other side of it, if you click it again, here are the factors that people look at commonly in the organization. And here are the intentions that people result or intend to behave with. So look at these 5 intentions for just a quick moment. The intent to perform at a higher than average level, the intent to be an organizational citizen, meaning looking after the welfare of the organization, intent to use discretionary effort on behalf of the organization's outcomes, intent to stay as long as they can in the organization, and finally, to endorse the organization and its leadership. Now, those 5 intentions are what we consider to be, if people are intending to behave in these 5 ways, they are very passionate about their work. They're very, very involved about their work. Notice there's no question of satisfaction in this.
Right. So what I hear you saying is that instead of trying to measure passion at the end of the appraisal process, if organizations are more concerned about what's happening before the appraisal process through those factors, that they're more likely to get these 5 intentions from people. And help us understand, why are these intentions important again? They're amazing intentions, but what are they? Is intention?
They're better predictors of behavior. Essentially, engagement is a state of mind, of happiness or involvement or absorption, words that connect you to what you're doing. They're fully present in the work site. but these intentions are the result of that engagement. And they're the best, shall we say, predictors of what's really going to happen because of that state of being, because that state of well-being.
So rather than just measuring behaviors, you're measuring intentions, and those intentions are what lead to
That's
behavior.
Right. That's right.
So let me ask you this. What can you go back, Kayla, go back to the slide before this one. The one that yes, that one with all these 12 factors. So we're saying that if organizations have these 12 factors in place, people are more likely to have a positive appraisal process. And then the result is employee work passion. Explain what the term employee work passion means and why are you using that instead of employee engagement?
Well, traditionally, the concept of engagement has three sort of states to it. You can be engaged, actively, or engaged, disengaged, and actively disengaged. What was missing was that higher level, what we call actively engaged. We're using the word work passion as the mechanism to differentiate it. So because we believe that that's really what you're aiming for. Somebody who is persistently positive, values-based behaviors, given what they're really doing in their jobs. It has to do with connecting with their jobs. So if you look at these factors, what we try to do is measure things like, if we look at the organizational characteristics, do people feel they have a sense of growth, both career growth and job growth? Is there procedural justice in the organization, meaning are decisions fair? And then distributed justice, are people being paid fairly for the job they're doing? Collaboration, meaning do ideas get shared across unit lines? Performance expectations, which has to do with an organization. What happens if you do perform? What happens if you don't? Then look at the job characteristics of meaningful work. It has to be meaningful to self and others. Task variety, in other words, it's not a routine, so robotic a job that there isn't problems, but also challenges with it. Workload balance in relation to, am I being asked to do things in a reasonable amount of time? Autonomy, do I have choice in how I do my job? Feedback, what quality do I get from my job about how well I'm doing? And then connectedness with colleagues and leaders. These 12 factors are typically what bother people or create low sense of well-being or a high sense of well-being in certain combinations.
So Drea, I've got a personal perspective on this, and I know that you and I have talked about this a lot. It is absolutely essential that organizations work to make those 12 factors a reality in their organization. I'm also really cognizant of the fact that either could be a slow slog or it might not happen as quickly or as robustly as we would like. And so what do people do if their organization doesn't have those 12 factors in place? And what we know about human beings is they want to thrive, they want to flourish. And so and Kayla, if you could go back, go forward to the next slide again, that what we're really trying to do now is to understand, could we as individuals manage our own appraisal process? And can managers actually, there you go. And can managers actually help us to facilitate us in managing this appraisal process more effectively?
Yes, the answer is yes to that. You notice the personal characteristics designation, that light green around the appraisal of cognition and so forth. Personal characteristics have to do with who is the person that's interacting with the organization? What's the person-organizational fit? In other words, do the values of the individual fit with the values of the organization, as an example? Those personal characteristics in interaction with the 12 factors that they experience in their organization lead them to a place of either engagement or, better yet, work passion or not. Now, those personal characteristics and are connected to who am I as a person? What do I value? What do I want out of my work? Those kinds of things. And that interaction, that capacity leaves people with choices. People can make choices about the reasons for why they do what they do.
So that's what I get excited about. I think that's really part of what today is about, is to say to people who are listening to this that the organization needs to be working on employee engagement or employee work passion. But we can also, as individuals, if we learn learn the skill of motivation. That motivation is what is supporting this appraisal process. It's what I've called the fuel of employee work passion. It's like if we learn how to shift our own motivation from suboptimal to optimal, and if managers can learn to facilitate that process, then we are really standing a good chance of having a workplace with people who have work passion.
So it's two-way street. The organization has to be aware of certain conditions, and the individual has to be aware of certain conditions in their own mind and who they are. And that combination allows people to really come to work with a feeling of fully present at what I'm doing.
So let me, I'm going to invite that anyone who's listening to this can, in the chat box, if you have questions for Drea, you need clarification, you want some other insights around his work. As you're writing your questions and Becky's taking a look at those, what I would like to just, and Drea, I know that you would never say this yourself, so I'm just going to say it, that over the last 3 years, your work, your research has won twice the Excellence in Academic Publishing from the Academy of Human Resource Development. And you actually just won a European award for something that appeared in a journal in Europe. And so this is award-winning research that is pretty exciting. And it's different because what we're saying is there's an upper end to engagement, and you've been able to identify those 12 factors, and we're saying that motivation can play a role in the whole issue of engagement in employee work passion. Hi, Becky.
Hi, I'm ready with a lot of questions that are coming in. And I want to start with this one from Mark. Mark's asking, which of the 12 conditions have the greatest impact? So thinking of the 80-20 rule on employee passion.
Well, first of all, that's a great question. And so if you notice that those 12 factors are broken into 3 higher order factors, an organizational factor, a job factor, and a relationships factor. If Mark, the most impactful dimensions are within the job factors. So meaningful work, task variety, and autonomy are 3 fundamentally huge impact, have really great impact on the intent to perform, as well as the intent to use discretionary effort and endorse the organization.
Great. And also, Michael had a very related question, wondering if you could explain the difference between connectedness and collaboration in those 12
Sure.
items.
Connectedness with colleagues and or boss really has to do with the interpersonal sense that my boss has my back, or my colleagues have my back. My colleagues are looking out for my professional and personal welfare as well as the boss's. The idea of collaboration is really the sharing of business ideas, business acumen, initiatives, even resources across boundary lines, because a lot of organizations get very, very siloed, and all of a sudden you're loyal to the silo or to the sub-organization you're in, but not to the organization's fundamental purpose.
Okay, that's very helpful. So this is a question I often get in these types of events. And Tina is wondering, if someone's attending this call and is really engaged by these ideas, how do they get the buy-in of their managers?
Well, the $64,000 question. I mean, that is, I haven't got a clue given where I think Tina's asking a fundamentally important question, but that all depends. It sort of depends on the organization and who the manager is and what the manager believes. One of the things that I think Susan's going to be talking about, and I don't want to steal any of her thunder, but she's really going to be talking about a paradigm a different paradigm for motivation than what presently exists in organizations today. So
I'm sorry, Drea, I was just going to say that also in our third block, towards the end of our time together, we're going to have a woman, Shavit, from Merrill Lynch, who has done an amazing job of positioning these kinds of ideas in her organization. And so we might want to hold Tina's question and have someone who's actually done it and been successful at doing it answer that question. So
it's also possible that Chris could add something with the culture
point.
engine.
Yeah.
I do think, Tina, it's going to be an uphill battle when we talk to managers. When I talk to managers about this model, they get it. However, It takes work. It takes time. We have made interventions in corporations, but it took a year and a half before we got some changes. And we changed some of the more important questions, such as autonomy, people's perceptions of autonomy in their job, or their connectedness with their boss, or the sense of growth in the organization. Those things take resources. And some issues are systems issues, such as the organizational issues of growth and procedural justice and so on and so forth. And some are job issues where people are shaping their jobs differently, and some are boss related, which are relationships. So Tina, a great question. Can't answer it in the amount of time we have.
Hey, Drea, the other thing I think that people could do something about, and then I want to also talk a little bit about the motivation issue that you just mentioned, but I think the difference between procedural and distributive justice, and today we're talking a lot about motivation, and some of our other presenters are very steeped in the research that shows that what is required for human beings to thrive in the workplace or in life, but especially in the workplace, are the three psychological needs of autonomy, relatedness, and competence. Mm-hmm. And so what we're teaching individuals is how they can satisfy their own psychological needs in the workplace, mm-hmm. and how managers can facilitate that for people. But one of the areas that I think people don't recognize that really affects relatedness in the workplace is justice. Yeah, and I was wondering if you just might say a word about that.
Well, I was really surprised in our initial research because we thought initially that people left the organization because of their boss, because of a boss that they didn't like or they didn't want to work with. As we got into it, we found that that's only a secondary question. It's an important question, but a secondary question. The most important question is, what's my feeling of justice in the organization? And justice is based upon how I'm paid, but more importantly, how decisions are made in relation to the things that happen in the organizations. How do decisions get made? How do we suppress bias? How do we involve people in it? What kind of voice people get? That procedural justice issue is the number one reason why people leave. So that means if I work for a boss that is really not a good boss and everybody knows it, and the organization permits that to continue, people leave because they feel the organization is not moral, it's not just, and as a result of that, it's not just my boss that's bothering me, it's the organization's inability to help itself manage its employees in a way that's motivating.
I just think that's huge. And I know we're at the end of this almost, but Kayla, could you do me a favor and go back to, and you're going to have to go backwards quite a few slides real quick. Is that a hard thing to do? Just keep going backwards. I've actually heard that if you show people slides over and over again like this, it's suboptimal. Keep going. I'm going to go to the model that we didn't have, that model. So I just wanted to be clear that what Drea was suggesting is that in order for us to help individuals, and Tina, this might answer some of your question too, if we could start to help organizations understand how what they're doing is setting people up for suboptimal motivation, to be disinterested, external, or imposed, and that it's the reason for people's motivation that matters. And if they are aligned, integrated, or inherent, that they're going to have optimal motivation and all of the beautiful things that come with people being optimally motivated with a sense of well-being, with a sense of vitality and positive energy. And so this is what we're trying to teach people, is that if they have the skill of motivation to be able to shift from suboptimal to optimal, that over time or because of their motivation, that is what supports or encourages employee work passion. So thank you. So now you can go forwards again. And
so I want to thank everyone for their thoughtful questions. We don't unfortunately have time with our very packed schedule with this amazing team of experts to take any more, but we will share these, and perhaps throughout the event we'll be able to ask some. I want to take a moment just to thank you, Drea, so much for your ability to show up in such a powerful way today with your research and learning. And we want to share with people how they can get in touch with you. And all of this will be included in our email follow-up. There's some books that you could check out: Leadership and the 1 Minute Manager, Achieve Leadership Genius, The Leader Within. And there's an email contact for Drea if you'd like to get in touch with him regarding his academic journal articles. And Kayla, if we can look at the next slide, please. We also have some other resources from the Ken Blanchard Corporation about optimal motivation and employee work passion, and we will be providing these links as well if you'd like to get more information after this event. Thank you so much, Drea, for participating with us
And
today.
I'm gonna run off too, Becky. So I'll be back on the top of the hour or whenever.
Yes, and I am thrilled to welcome now. We're going to say goodbye to Drea and to Susan. We'll see Susan back in a few minutes. And I am thrilled